should I test my hormones? This is like one of the biggest questions that I get, you guys. So I wanted to tackle this today. Super common. I think that sometimes when we think we have our hormones tested and we can see the results, we're going to get the answers to why we feel off. And if you're a real analytical kind of person, maybe it can make you feel better that you know like what exactly is going on. So I think hormone testing is actually a way for us to kind of satisfy and kind of if we're worried about something, it can help us to, you know, relax our minds to kind of know what's going on. So you can start with hormone testing or you can start with the root causes. I want to talk about both today so you can be informed, and if you have any questions, definitely pop them in the chat for me. Okay, first of all, let's talk about what a hormone imbalance actually feels like. So I know that you feel like, you know, hormone testing can give you all the answers, but what it does is it'll actually give you the answers to which of these 4 pillars that I'm going to talk about today are actually off. Okay, so let's talk about it. What does it feel like? And I'm going to start with a few of these hormones that I see that are the most off. Estrogen. Okay, estrogen, there's a thing called estrogen dominance, if you guys have heard of that. Some of the symptoms that people have when they have estrogen dominance are, you know, long, heavy, painful periods, clotting. People that maybe have excess estrogen at certain times of the month, they might get just these painful cramps, mood swings, really like, you know, bad PMS symptoms, acne. They might have breakouts, especially around like their chin and their mouth. So if this is you, I'll put estrogen in the comments and we can circle back and we can talk about that together. For some people, if you have periods of high stress for a really long time, this can affect your cortisol levels. So if you're like a type A, an overachiever, always on the go, 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 put me in the comments, put stress, and I'll come back and circle with you. Maybe you have some type of autoimmune challenge. You have been diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, then you're a dead ringer for low cortisol. Okay, so if cortisol is lower in the morning, and you're not going to be able to basically feel like you can get up out of bed or just get simple things done. You just feel exhausted all the time. Let's talk about another symptom that I see all the time that can pinpoint one of the hormones. So another symptom is hair growth in all the wrong places. So ladies, if you're growing hair in places that you don't want to grow hair, and you're losing hair in places that you should have hair, it can be really frustrating, first off. You might have hair and you notice you have hair growing out of like your nipples or out of your belly button or on your face or neck. So some of you guys may seem to be losing hair on your head, especially right up here in your hairline and your forehead. It seems to be like going back. So these are all symptoms of what could be a hormone imbalance. If this is you, I want you to put hair in the comments. I'll come back and I'll chat with you. So let's talk about these 4 root causes. And there's 4 of them. We're going to start with one that's blood sugar balance. This is So, so, so important when it comes to hormone balance is making sure we have stable blood sugar levels. This is why I'm always asking you guys, hey, are your meals regular and reliable? How long has it been since you've eaten last? Micronutrients. Micronutrients is the second one. So certain nutrients could be deficient, and these hormones support your happy hormones, which we'll talk about as we get into this live. The third one is stress. So stress, we've already touched on this a little bit. If your cortisol level's high, you'll start to really dump nutrients that are essential. Nutrients that you need to feel better, to feel energy, to feel happy, to feel balanced. Gut imbalances is the last one. So if your gut is not absorbing these nutrients, it could be creating a lot of situations with your hormones. So gut imbalances can create micronutrient deficiencies. And these micronutrient deficiencies can lead to hormone imbalance, they can lead to unstable blood sugar levels, and then just perpetuated stress on your body. So all these things kind of go together. Let's talk about blood sugar, for instance, because I got another example. So for blood sugar, I might just ask you some simple questions if we sit down together virtually and say, like, how are you eating? Have you been packing snacks? How long is it going in between your meals? Do you feel like you're never really satisfied? Okay, let's look at the component of your meals. What does your plate look like? So we'll dig into these things. Again, I just want to say that the hormones, they aren't the root cause. Your hormones are off because of something else going on in your body. Your hormones are off because maybe you have low blood sugar. That could be one of the reasons. Okay, let's talk about testing now. I don't want to get too nerdy with the testing, but I do want to explain a little bit about it. Some people start with a baseline test for your hormone levels. For me, I like to take a look at the root causes first. So your blood sugar, your micronutrients, your stress levels, and your gut, and kind of see what all of these things look like. So I like to see what these things look like before we test, to kind of see what we need to do, and we can kind of measure progress that way. So there are different ways to test your hormones. Lots of different ways. But I have found the one test that I like to use in working with women is Dutch testing. So this stands for Dried Urine Test for Comprehensive Hormones. It's pretty easy. It's easy to obtain. It's kind of pricey. That's why I like to start with the root causes. But I think this is a really good testing company. If you go to the doctor, your primary care physician might do some serum testing, do some blood work. And this is really well documented as well. It's best used in sex hormones, which we're going to get into in a minute. That's your progesterone and your E2. That's your estrogen, estradiol2, throughout your menstrual cycle. So they might choose to do like blood work and look at those. The Dutch test is a 24-hour urine test. So it's something you can do on your own. And if you want any peer-reviewed research, I do have an article. So if anyone wants a copy of the research validating this type of testing, I know that some of you might put research in the comments. But let's jump into what the Dutch test tells us. Okay, there's three. If you order this test, you take it, you get it back, you might go, what? And so this is what I do. I'll help you interpret the test. There's three giant sections. So the first one looks at your sex hormones. So that's your estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. And the best way to think about estrogen is to think of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Think like crazy. Like the typical, when people say women are crazy or you feel like you're crazy around your period, those sorts of things could be excess estrogen. So if you're having heavy, like I said earlier, painful periods, acne around your chin or jawline, cramping, really bad mood swings, all of these things could be due to an elevated estrogen level. If you get low estrogen, so it's not elevated, but you have lower estrogen, you can get like depression or hot flashes. So think menopause here. So our body really has two modes as women: reproduction and not producing. So that's really it. When we move into perimenopause and as we go into menopause, we're no longer in reproduction mode. So naturally your sex hormones are going to go up and down, and our menstrual cycles are going to start to decline over time. So I think we can touch on this too, because I get asked about hormone replacement therapy. And so I just want to say that if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, giving someone hormone replacement therapy is not the right fit. I mean, what we want to do is really start with how to help these women at this age when we're in reproduction mode. How do we help them create their own hormones by themselves? So that's what we're really looking at. How do we jumpstart the communication? These hormones are ways that our body communicates to function properly. So there's a lot of things that suppress our natural hormone communication. So then your ovaries don't, if things are suppressed, if something's suppressing your hormones, your ovaries, they don't want to produce sex hormones, including estrogen and progesterone. Okay, let's talk about progesterone for a minute. Progesterone, I want you to think, so estrogen's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Progesterone is like the prom queen. Okay, progesterone, the homecoming queen, whatever you want to think progesterone. The queen in the parade, Miss America, progesterone, the happy hormone. Everybody wants more progesterone. Okay, so there's a good book that kind of goes into all of this. It's kind of like if you guys are struggling with periods, having regular periods, getting your period back, any of those things, if you're in reproduction mode and you're watching this, I recommend the book Period Repair Manual by Laura Brighton. It's like the period Bible for like a woman's body and how it works. So you can use it as a reference manual. This is something that I usually work through with women when we're trying to get the period back and get regulated. One other thing about progesterone is you have really high levels when you're pregnant. So I have clients that tell me like they felt their best when they're pregnant. I actually have a call with somebody later this afternoon, and she reached out to me. She was trying to get pregnant. We worked through how to get her period back. She had some gut dysfunctions and imbalances. So we worked on the root cause. She got her period back. She got pregnant. She felt wonderful while she was pregnant. She reached back out to me for some follow-up. Her baby is 9-10 months old now, almost a year. She's seeing some of the gut and food sensitivities again that she reached out to me for help with initially. So the hormones have naturally, her progesterone was high during pregnancy. She felt great, and now it's come back down. So we're going to circle back and work on some of those things again. So I do want to say that, progesterone, when we have more of it, and it's that happy hormone. Testosterone, it's like the janitor at the school. You need them around. This is where you get hair growth, like I'm saying, in all the wrong places. Maybe you have more of it on your body and less of it on your head. It's like what's going on with my hair? It's consistent with something that we call PCOS. If you guys aren't familiar with that, that's polycystic ovarian syndrome. And really the hallmark, like the symptoms of PCOS are really irregular periods, having cysts on your ovaries. They aren't really cysts, they're just underdeveloped follicles, hair growth, mustache, beard. So this is classic PCOS symptoms. Testosterone is essential. We need it. If you don't have enough testosterone, you're gonna feel like crap. So you're gonna have really, really, really low energy. And stress, so back to those 4 root causes, stress seems to be the most common reason behind suppressed testosterone. Let's go back to periods for a second, reproductive mode. Women are typically on a 28-day cycle. So as you can imagine, your hormones are shifting during the month. So especially estrogen and progesterone. So this is actually how we have a cycle. And it's the rise and fall of estrogen and progesterone that creates our menstrual periods, our cycles. So the time you test, using the Dutch test, the time you test around your cycle is critical for a reference range for your hormones. So in the Dutch test specifically, because this is the one that I work with the most, it's 5 to 7 days after your ovulation. Now, if you don't ovulate, which does happen in PCOS, it does happen if you're on birth control. If you don't ovulate, then it's kind of flat, and it doesn't really matter when you take the test. There's not going to be a big shift. So timing is key when it comes to hormone testing. If you're joining me, say hi, let me know you're here. I'm using the new Facebook producer, and it's a little wonky. So I want to see if you're here joining me, and if you're watching the replay later, #replay. Going to go into your sex hormones next, so stick with me. We're going to talk about estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. They have their own metabolism. So I want to focus more on estrogen metabolism because this is what I see the most women struggling with. And it's the most complicated. So with estrogen dominance in particular, that's too much estrogen, or your body has trouble clearing it out, you get symptoms like heavy periods, acne, like I said, around the face. If you missed it earlier, you might have mood swings, you might have irregular cycles. So estrogen, it sometimes can get stuck, like clogged, like it's not flowing properly, it's not communicating with the other hormones the way that it should. So actually, testosterone can go a few places too, as it's trying to go through its cycle. And one thing that testosterone can do is it can aromatize. What this means is it's almost like it's going in, it's putting on a different hat, it's changing, it's coming out, and it's acting like estrogen. So it can actually not act like it, it can kind of become estrogen, like poof, it changes, and testosterone can become estrogen. So it kind of is interesting, this one. Alcohol can upregulate this process. So when I check in with my clients, one of the things that I really want to make sure I check in with them on is family history. Really, really important. So if you're in reproductive phase, if you're a cycling woman and you're curious about your hormones, the best place to take a look is at the females in your family history and their hormones and see if there could be some genetic components, because genetics are real. I mean, they're real. So when I look at estrogen metabolism on these tests, I'll see, and I'm going to get really nerdy with you for a second, just so I can explain some of the things that I see with estrogen dominance is 3 different funnels that estrogen can do. So the cool thing about the Dutch test is it'll show me these things. Okay, if estrogen's elevated, there's a different treatment or protocol depending on which way the estrogen is being metabolized. So the cool thing about the Dutch test is I can see how it's being metabolized, because it's a urine test. It's what comes out. It's how your body has metabolized it. So yeah, there are 3 different pathways. There is the 4-OH pathway, which is not a good pathway, okay? It's like you don't want to go down that road. There's the 2-OH pathway, which is a good protected pathway. And then there's the 16-OH pathway. So you guys, if you take this test and you get the results back, and you are probably like, what is going on here? I'll help you read this if you end up doing something like a Dutch test. But I want to tell you this because people with a history of breast or cervical cancer in their family history, it might be a good thing to look at this type of testing. Get it done, look at the way that estrogen's being metabolized, including where it's going, so you can kind of see what pathway it's going down. Because it's not just as simple as I have elevated estrogen levels. Look at how it's being metabolized. This is why I love the Dutch test. You can see which pathway it's going down. So the 4-OH pathway, not a good pathway. Don't want to go down that pathway. This is the pathway that is highest associated with breast and cervical cancers. So there are things that's really cool that you can do nutritionally and certain lifestyle behaviors that can be put into practice to help shift that estrogen from the negative pathway to the positive pathway or the neutral pathway, which is wonderful, you guys, that our body has the ability to do this. 2-OH, that is the good pathway. This is the pathway where if you've heard the word methylation, if you've heard the term MTHFR, it's a gene, comes into play. This is something that we can look at, and we can look at what's going down. We can look at improving nutrients instead of just taking vitamins for no reason. We can really see what's going on. We can take a look nutritionally at the way we're supporting our body. If we have symptoms of heavy bleeding, if we have PMS, really bad mood swings, if this is you, type mood in the comments, let me know. This pathway, we can really look to improve this and look at these nutritional components and lifestyle changes, things like that. So this is a pathway that is more neutral, a more protective pathway. It's a good pathway. And we can look at things like stress, and we can look at things like caffeine and what's going on in your life. These things can really, really affect what's going on with your estrogen levels. And so if we can see that estrogen's being metabolized, and it's being metabolized down this pathway, there are so many things that we can do to make it better. So this is estrogen. I didn't even talk about testosterone. That is on the test as well. Progesterone, it goes into all the sex hormones. But I want to kind of move on because estrogen is the most common. I'll move on now to something that when you do the Dutch test, it's called the HPA axis. It's in the second section. It's looking at your adrenals. So let's talk about your adrenals, because I think this is a buzzword for a lot of people adrenal fatigue, you might have heard. So you might hear that if you have adrenal fatigue, you can be put on a meal plan. And listen, guys, I'm going to be real straight with you. If you have autoimmune symptoms, which cause adrenal shutdown from long term, this is years and years and years of stress on your body, ain't no meal plan going to fix that situation. You need a whole lifestyle plan. Okay, so if there's somebody out there telling you a meal plan is going to fix this situation, not going to. There's a beautiful chart that kind of explains what's going on with this test. With adrenals and things like that, that's stress is coming in. Stress, your body's under stress. A lot of times people will say, I don't feel stress. For example, I was involved in a car crash a month ago. My body has been going through stress, and I feel it. And some days I don't, but my point is, you might not always feel stressed, but your body can be in long-term stress where you're just pushing every day, and all that builds up in your system. And it can create, basically sends messages to your brain, to the hypothalamus, to the pituitary gland to secrete cortisol, which is your stress hormone. So your body, it's really cool to think about all these, how it communicates with each other and then send out cortisol to try to help with the stress. With hormones, it's really cool because your body's trying to help you. When you understand what's going on, it's trying to regulate itself. So the secret, it also talks about DHEA in this portion of the test and the results. This helps control blood sugar. So what I'm trying to say is nothing's really in a silo when it comes to hormones. They all communicate with each other. So every part of your body, your hormones, they're trying to communicate with each other here to try to find balance, to try to find a homeostasis. So cortisol is something that's released when we go into fight or flight mode. And or it could be we're just drinking too much caffeine. That's another one. So how many of you coffee drinkers out there? Give me a coffee emoji. And I don't know if I can see comments. This new Facebook producer is not showing me much. So enter a comment and let me see if it's actually working. But let's talk about cortisol. So there are 3 different scenarios I want to talk about that can happen with cortisol. So if your cortisol metabolism is right in the middle, it's pretty healthy on this test, the Dutch test. So if it's elevated, you might need to tamper things back a little bit. This can look like, it can manifest itself in like the wired but tired. And if you guys can relate to that, say me. Maybe you have trouble chilling out, resting, relaxing, slowing your brain down. Maybe you're a chest breather and it's hard to get down into the deep belly breathing. So maybe working with someone on some grounding breath work so you can, and we do this a lot when we're trying to be more intuitive and be more in touch with our body too, and our body signals. This can be a different intervention that you might not be thinking of, but if you're burnout, if you're tired, if you're stressed, you need to work on things to bring that back into balance. And if your cortisol, third thing that you might see on the test results in this area is that if your cortisol is completely petered out. So this is like it's given up. And this basically tells us we aren't producing cortisol anymore, which is essential. So we need cortisol. And we should see a curve on the chart. So we should want to get up in the morning and we should want to get out of bed. And when we wake up, our cortisol should rise. And in the afternoon, at some point, it should start to go down. And at night, it should be at the lowest point when we're ready to go to bed. We shouldn't be having this burst of energy at night. This means our cortisol pattern is out of whack. It's flipped. It's out of balance. So let's talk about some really specific things that can be done at any age, whether you're in the reproductive stage or you're in your non-reproductive years. So I focus a lot with clients in the perimenopausal phase and the menopausal phase. So when you're menopausal, you aren't creating hormones via your ovaries anymore. You're primarily making hormones from your adrenals. So there is one other section I want to mention of the Dutch test. It's like the third big section on the last page, and it looks at organic acids. So what the Dutch test is, if you haven't missed it, is it's urine test. So it's looking at your metabolites. What's kind of left over after your body has utilized everything, it's gone through the kidneys, you've excreted. The metabolites can tell us a lot. They can give us kind of a few markers of nutrients, so we can see what nutrients are deficient, so we can work towards improving our hormones. So for example, B12, B6, glutathione. Glutathione tells us about our liver, about our immune system. So there's also serotonin and melatonin and oxidative stress, which can tell us overall what types of cellular damage is going on. So it won't necessarily say you're deficient in this nutrient. That would be something like in a serum test from the doctor. But what it tells us is more about the nutrient that binds to those nutrients. So this is metabolites. If this thing isn't binding to B12, for instance, your MMA is going to appear high, meaning your B12 is low. So you can tell things from these metabolites that come out in your urine. If you're on a supplement, it might be altered. So this is the one really, really good reason it is to like review with someone, with a healthcare professional, before you just jump in and take a test. Because first of all, they're not cheap. These tests is a little pricey, which is why I like to work on the 4 root causes first, which we talked about in the beginning. But also because some of the over-the-counter things that you're on could affect the test. You don't want to waste that kind of money. So singular, Flonase, those types of steroids can change the accuracy of the adrenal report because they're nasal steroids. So you want to sit down, you want to make sure you're talking with someone about what over-the-counter products you're taking in advance before you go jump into taking this type of test. What I usually like to do is have a deep dive type of consultation with a client and understand their history, understand their periods, their cycles, their hormone story, what's going on, what they're hoping to get from testing like this. So we would have a deep dive, like a pre-visit, that's important. They would take the test and then we would have a follow-up. So I have people say to me all the time, I think my hormones are acting up. And the first thing I like to ask people when they say this is, what does this mean to you, acting up? Because that can mean so many different things. So when we dig into it, what we can see is that the hormone imbalance is a root cause, like there's something greater going on. So there always is something greater going on. Back to those 4 things: gut imbalances, blood sugar instability, stress, or micronutrient imbalances. So I want to address this because I think last time I talked about hormones, I got this question about hormone replacement therapy, and I'm not an expert in that. I don't claim to be an expert in that. So when you're going into perimenopause and you're going into menopause, what it basically is basically it's reverse puberty. And you guys remember how uncomfortable that was. So it's, some people get on HRT and they have a really, really wonderful experience. Like their life changes. But I think it can be appropriate if it's well managed. And what I've learned from just my own research and my own education is it seems like there's a lot of trial and error in that arena. So I don't really have a lot for you on that. But to summarize, I think that hormone testing, it's something that a lot of people ask me about. I think, you know, they want answers. And I think you can satisfy some of those things. So you can start with the test, or like I like to do, you can start with the root causes, because the test is just going to tell you what the root cause is, and you're going to have to work on that. So either way, and if you want to just discuss it with me, maybe we can set up a coffee chat and we can talk through it together. Put the coffee emoji in the comments if that's something you want to do. Again, if you see the replay later, #replay, let me know that you were here. Ask me any questions. I look forward to seeing you guys next week and seeing you inside the group. All right, before my blood sugar goes down, I'm gonna have some lunch. You guys have a good day.